All right, good morning, everyone. This is Leela Srinivasan. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Lever, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our webinar on the ROI of enhancing your candidate experience. If we can go to the next slide, just a few pieces of housekeeping items for us today. First of all, you're going to see that the phone lines are muted, but we would love to make this as interactive as possible. So please do use the, there's a questions area on the right-hand side of GoToWebinar where you can put in any questions that you have. You can also use the chat box if you like. Secondly, we'd love this to be a social event, so please do use the hashtag Candex and also Lever when you tweet. You'll see that in the bottom of every slide. And to make it more interesting, we're going to give away a $100 Amazon gift card for the most useful tweet. So get your fingers at the ready. So let me go ahead and introduce today's featured speaker. And I'll wager that some of you, at least some of you, and probably a lot of you, are on the call because of today's featured speaker, Mr. William Tincup, with more initials after his name than I have had hot breakfast. So William is the leader of Tincup & Co., a principal analyst, and he's, how do you describe Tincup? Well, I think it's actually kind of interesting the way he describes himself, part researcher, part marketing savant, and part advisor. And I've actually even lost count of the number of boards that William is on, but it seems to be in the dozen or so. He describes himself as always curious, always learning, asking tons of questions, forming strong opinions, which are loosely held, happy to change his mind with better data, always harsh, which is both a good and bad thing, and accurate at least some of the time. So I've known of and known William for many years now and find him to be one of the wisest voices in the talent acquisition space, which is why I am delighted that we're hosting him today to talk about a very important topic, the ROI of enhancing your candidate experience. So without further ado, let me hand it over to you, William.
Awesome, awesome. So a couple of things we're going to go through today, and I'm kind of reminded of the first time I did a webinar about 12 years ago, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. But this is our agenda. We're going to get through a lot. Leela is going to interrupt me if she finds a great question, either via Twitter or via the chat box. She's been instructed, and she would like to interrupt me if she finds a great question, and I like that. I actually prefer that you get the questions out. If they're burning in your pocket, let's get to it. It'll actually make it better for everyone, and/or we'll wait to the end. And hopefully, I've inspired you to think a little different about the candidate experience. That's my goal today. If I have any goals in life, my goal today is just to get you to think a little differently about the candidate experience. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the basics, the Candidate Experience Awards. I've been active as a volunteer and on their advisory board for a number of years now. And the reason for this is I find the concept very compelling. I find it, the idea that, you know, when it first came out, when Elaine and Jerry and Ed first kind of came up with this idea of why not focus our combined mentality on the candidate experience, what they feel, I just thought it was brilliant. And so I wanted to get involved. And I want everybody on the phone call to reach out to these people, Jerry, Elaine, Ed, and obviously Kevin Grossman. They're far and away. They're doing a lot of great research. They have wonderful sponsors like Lever, and they, you know, every year they move our combined intellect forward. So they're making us smarter. We should all be more aware of what they're doing, and you can obviously kind of reach out to them in a number of different ways. If you need email addresses, just hit me up and I'll make sure to connect you. But I want to start with the basics. There is some more knowledge that's being advanced in our little ecosystem by much smarter people than myself. Okay, so now I'll get back to that first webinar. So I didn't really understand the medium, and the first thing I did was tell a joke, and it was a really funny joke. In fact, it was quite an amazing joke, and no one laughed because it's a one-way medium. Someone laughed. I didn't hear laughter because essentially I was talking to a screen and no laughter was to be had. So I kind of bombed that, and I want you to know that I might bomb today, but I will continue on. And today's exercise, which I'm very experimental, but today's exercise, the first thing I want you to do, so you're with 200 of your peers, and most of you are like me, you're hardwired like myself. I want you to close your eyes. And I know this is going to be hard for a lot of you because you want to look at Twitter or Instagram or something else, but I want to tell you a story. And if you'll bear with me, it'll bear fruit. But I want you to just close your eyes, let everything go, and let me tell you a story about grocery shopping. Okay? So let's go grocery shopping together. Okay? All right. So the first thing you do when you're grocery shopping is you drive up. There's a procession, there's traffic. When you arrive at the parking lot, the cars are either full, the parking lot is full, or it's not. There's either trash on the ground or not. There's carts scattered everywhere or not. The cars in the parking lot might be like your cars, or they might not be like your cars. But you're aware, even if you're subconsciously aware, you're aware of your surroundings. Are you parking under a light? Is it night? Is it going to be safe? All these things kind of come into play subconsciously at the beginning of your grocery experience. Okay, so the parking lot, what does it look like? Just in your dreams, as you're thinking about it right now, what does it look like? What does it feel like? Whole Foods, Wegmans, Central Market, Albertsons, it doesn't really matter, Walmart. The idea is that a parking lot is a parking lot, and an experience in a parking lot is an experience in a parking lot. Next thing I want you to do is I want you to think about the baskets. You get up to the basket line, and do the baskets have trash in them? Are they wet because it's rainy? Are they all in a nice little neat line? Is it easy to get to? Are they really, really awesome, like light baskets that you can maneuver easily? Are they heavy and the wheels don't work? That experience that you have with the basket, the basket, maybe your kids hanging off of it, etc., but there's an experience in that basket. You've come from the parking lot, you've had that experience, you're having now an experience with the basket, and you're starting on your pilgrimage. So now let's go to the produce department. What do you notice? What's the floors look like? Are they dirty? Are they clean? Does the fruit and vegetables, does it look like it's been rotated? Do the bananas all yellow and grungy? Have the plants essentially been watered? Have they been nurtured? Is it well lit? That experience, there's all kinds of great experiences there, both visual and sensory, that you have in the produce department, even if you don't like produce, which, by the way, side note, I hate vegetables and fruit. Anywho, I do spend time in the produce department because my kids both love vegetables and fruit, thank God. So there's an experience in the produce department. And now I want you to go to the bakery. What do you smell? Is there a freshly baked bread? Is there a bunch of cakes? Is there donuts? Does it look like all the bagels are gone? Is it dirty? Is it clean? Is the staff helpful? Does it look like it's a fruitful experience? Do you want to buy something from the bakery? Do you feel at home? Do you feel at peace in the bakery? Or do you just speed right past it to the meat market? Okay, what does the meat market look like? Do you get up to the counters? Are the windows all kind of foggy and wet? Do the meat looks like it's been rotated? Is the staff behind there, the butchers behind there, are they friendly? Do they look like they want to help you, or they just want to get on to the next task to get on with their work? What is your experience at the meat market? What does it look like? What does it feel like? How do you feel when you experience the meat market? Further in your the deli. Sliced meat, sliced cheese. Do they slice it too thin? Do they slice it too thick? Do they listen to you? Do they go over in poundage just because they're lazy? Like, what does that look like? What does it feel like? Do they call your name? Do they know your name already because you're there every week? What is the experience in the deli? And again, the windows to the deli meats and cheeses can be clean. There's a choice. They can be clean, they can be dirty. Maybe they could be frosted over or not. These are all choices that are outside of your control per se. You're going through this experience, and what do you feel? I want you to feel the deli right now. And you move on to the milk and eggs. By the way, the grocery stores don't make any money off milk or eggs. That's why they're always placed at the back of the grocery stores. But what do you get there? Do you look, and have they rotated the stock? Do they have the 2% milk that you want? Do they have choices of soy milk if you like soy milk? Do the eggs, are they broken? Are they not broken? You can kind of see like the windows, the treatment of both the milk and eggs. Is it a wonderful experience, or is it a terrible experience? So now I'm going to make you think about it, these abstract thoughts of polar opposites. I either had a good experience in milk and eggs, or I had a terrible experience in milk and eggs.
Tincup, you're making people hungry, by the way. There's a couple of comments.
Maybe because I'm hungry. Maybe this whole webinar was routed around my hunger. No, I'm just kidding. I want you to go further. I want you to get to the pharmacy department. Pharmacy in the grocery stores is it's an experience up to its own. Do they know you? Do they know you? Do they know your prescriptions? Do they have the things that you need? Not just the items on the shelves and the rotating of stock, but do they get out from behind their counter and go walk you to something that's over the counter that you could find? You find in a lot of pharmacy departments they want to hide behind the shelf. They want to hide behind the thing, and they don't want to get out and actually interact with customers. So what's your experience in the pharmacy? What do you get? What do you feel? Would you recommend it to a friend? Did you have a wonderful time? These are all questions you have to ask yourself. These are all subliminal things that happen. Now the aisles in between. This is what most people would tell you. This is where we all get fat. Is all the aisles in between. And so the things to look for there in your experiences, again, choice, where you have a choice, the choices at least that you want that fit your particular needs or dietary needs, and are they in stock? They either have the product or don't. Kmart essentially went out of business because they would advertise product and then not have it on the shelf when the sales hit. So do they have the product that you want at the time that you want it? What's the experience? Are they stocking the shelves in the middle of the day, and do they have cardboard and all kinds of stuff all over the place? Like, is it a mess? Is it easy to find people to help you find the things that you need? You know, you want a special type of chicken nugget for your kid, couldn't find it, you looked, you're not a moron, you just need help. Is it easy to find people, or is it difficult? That experience in and of itself, between the aisles, if you will. Now I want you to go to the checkout. And more we're kind of pushed to self-checkouts because it's just more profitable. And I think they've figured out if we are going to steal something, we were probably going to steal it anyway, so let's just let them check out. What does that look like if you're checking out with an associate? What does it look like? Are they friendly? Are they nice? Do they smile? Are they just trying to go through this fast? Do they ever look you in the eye? Do they bag your groceries? Do they care about how they bag your groceries? Do they put, pesticides in with your eggs? Do they put cold goods in with your, with your dry goods? It's all kinds of things. Like there's a mixture of quality and quantity there, because you want them to go fast enough because you don't want to be in the slowest line ever, but at the same time you don't want your stuff crushed. At least crushed on the conveyor belt. So what is that experience? Do the things that are kind of your last minute shopping stuff, is it around you? Can you get to it? I want some gum, but I don't want to think about gum. I just want to get the gum right at the counter right when I'm about to. So that checkout experience, do they take credit cards, do they cash, is it a royalty program? All of those have been decisions that have been made for you, and you get to experience those decisions. Last, I'll probably do 2 more of these, and I don't want you to open your eyes. So please keep your eyes closed for 2 more slides, I promise. One is customer service, and it's an experience unto itself, because sometimes you leave things at the grocery store and you have to go back. Left the milk, left the dog food, left the beer, whatever the bid is, you got to go back and you got to experience. Sometimes you get home and the good is either past its date and you got to go back and interact with them. They've got a world unto its own in returns. Things that are returned for good reason and for no reason whatsoever. How do they deal with you? Are they trusting? Do they exchange a good? Is it a hassle? Do you have to prove that you got the thing there? Is it a thing, or are they gracious and they Go get that item. Yeah, not a problem. Come back. Got you covered. What's that experience at customer service? What does it tell you about them, their ownership, their leadership, store manager? What does it tell you about them? And then the last thing I want you to kind of think about is when you get home, you get the groceries out of your car, Suburban, whatever, and you bring them into your kitchen or wherever, and then you unpack them. What's that experience? And that goes all the way back to the way they were bagged on some level. Were they double bagged? Did you use plastic bags? Did you bring your own bags? Like whatever that experience is there, you have a new, unique experience when you're at home alone with those groceries. That all started way back when you decided to drive to the grocery store. And it started on that procession of parking lot, carts, etc. Okay, so you can open up your eyes now. All right. Why I think that story is important is there was many micro decisions about the experience. Many thousands of micro decisions that were made about what experience you would have. And what I want you to do now is pivot and think about your own candidate experience. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What do you think about it? What do you think about those micro experiences? How do you manipulate how to make someone feel going through that process? Like the produce department, you could make someone that loves produce love that experience in produce by just watering the plants, by just rotating the stock, by just having a clean produce department. So those decisions to do it or not, those are all decisions we make in recruiting. Those are all decisions we make in hiring. Those are all decisions we make in sourcing. Every single experience that that candidate has along the way with you can be manipulated. And in a good way. When I use the word manipulation, I think people tend to think negatively. Please don't. It can be orchestrated. Okay, think of it like that. You can orchestrate how people feel. With the top level questions, it's real simple. What do you think about your own thing, and would you recommend it to a friend? And really, I want to kind of move that dialogue into engaging all the senses, okay? Because we look at things, and it's usually suits us. It's how we communicate. It's how we like things. And there's nothing more frustrating for candidates is that you didn't meet me where I was. You didn't communicate to me in the way that I wanted communication. So I want us to engage the census. I want us to think about the procession, all of those things. Like we just went really quickly through a grocery experience from the parking lot all the way back to home. We just went really quickly through that experience. That's our entire hiring process. Okay, we have all of those little bitty departments and all of those little different micro experiences. What's the procession we want people to have, and what are the expectations that we want to set and continue to set with people? Okay, consumable communications, it's not enough for us to communicate, and this is going to kind of be a little counterintuitive because most of the candidate experience awards for the last couple of years have been like, if you just communicate with people, that'd be great. You know, don't just put the resume in the folder in the trash can and never communicate. If you just communicate, I would tell you we actually have to go further insofar as we need to actually create communications that get consumed. Back to the texting. If your candidate wants you to text them, text them. They want you to leave a voicemail, leave a voicemail. You want an email, you want an email. Like it is Burger King at that point. How do you want your communications? You know, it really, I want to make sure that you get our communications in the way that you'll consume them, the way that you love them the most. How do you like that? Because I can serve up the communications in many different ways. How would you like that? And the last one there is total transparency, which is not something we've been historically great at. And we're all of our hands are bloody here. So I'm not picking on any one person or even one group. But for the longest time, we've been in love with quantity. We've all gone so far to even have bonus structures and compensation based on quantity and volume of applications. And the thing is the expectations of our candidates are changing. And this you can make it a kind of 4 or 5 different things coming together. The internet, mobile technology, social technology, Glassdoor, whatever you want to kind of blame it on. You can blame it on the fact that people now will not accept anything less than transparent. And so that changes our rhythms with people. Here's where you're at right now. You're in a slot right now with 12 other candidates. We're going to go through a behavioral assessment with all 12. We're going to go through skills testing with all 12, and then we're going to go through drug testing with all 12. And then what you'll do next after that, if you make it through that cut, is then you're going to interview with the team. Like, we have to do a better job of explaining to them where you are now, where you're going, how it plays out, and not promising that they'll make it through that, just promising that there is a process and communicating. The last thing here, and this really is something I want you to do, if not this week, next week. I want you to go and apply for one of your own jobs. Go create a Gmail account, go through the whole bit, and apply for one of your own jobs, just to see what's there. And there's good, there's bad. Again, it's a grocery store. You're going to find things in those experiences that you like and go, wow, I didn't even know we did that. And you're going to find some things like, holy, we don't mop the floors. This is terrible. Our grocery store is, dirty. But you've got to have firsthand knowledge, not secondhand, thirdhand knowledge. You have to have firsthand knowledge of your own jobs. This is something I would do quarterly. So apply for one of your own jobs, and you can even mystery shop with some of your friends or family members, but mystery shop your own process. So now I want to back off of that for a moment, let you breathe, let you kind of consume a little of that, and I want to tell you a little bit about sales. And we're all in sales. Candidates are in sales. Hiring managers are in sales. Recruiters are sourcers. We're all in sales. I'm in sales. Leela's in sales. And there are but 2 rules of sales. The first is complete and utter honesty. A brutal honesty. Hey, you've applied for this job. You have about a 5% chance of getting that job. I mean, I just got to be honest with you. Okay, it doesn't look good. They're not even considering candidates that don't have a master's degree, and you don't have a bachelor's degree. You might still make it. They might take a chance on you, but it's the stack. The deck of cards is stacked against you. That brutal honesty we shy away from because we don't want to make them mad is the very thing that holds us back. Brutal honesty. And challenge yourself to be brutally honest with people, everyone, but more importantly, as we're talking about today in the candidate experience, candidates, just be honest with them. The reason for that is you're not just recruiting that candidate for that job today. You need to think the long term, the long game of, I want to actually interact with that candidate for the next 40 years in different ways. And it's predicated on being honest. So not kicking anybody's, ass about this, because our hands are all bloody because we've all kind of withheld information from candidates, and what I'm suggesting is don't at all. And I think that even with brutal honesty, what's the worst thing someone can say is, I didn't get the job, but I still want to do business with those people. That's the biggest compliment you can receive. I didn't get the job, but you know what? I understood the process. I understood where it was good for me and where it was bad for me, and they were brutally honest with me, and I'll be a customer of theirs for life. Maybe down the road, maybe we might find another fit for me. And so the brutal honesty leads to the relationship that you'll have with these candidates forever. Instead of thinking in a transitory way, we need to think about the long game, if you will. So let's move away from sales, close that chapter for just a second, and I want to talk a little bit about FedEx. So without getting into too much about our ages, but I remember an era where you would go to the post office and you would box things up, and they'd put bubble wrap in there, and you'd put an address on the bit, and then you just kind of hope that the package got there. Like, you just kind of a faith, love, hope, and trust. Just like, okay, Godspeed. Hope my parents get that stuff. Hope that happens. And look what FedEx and UPS, and, other companies, but let's just play with UPS for a second. Look what FedEx has done. You know everything about where that package is in the process. And for a moment, think of the metaphor package candidate, right? That's really what we're talking about. How they created a wonderful communications vehicle, but also here's where you're at. You know, your intake number was here. Billy took your box. Billy handed your box to Jamie. Jamie put your box on an airplane. The airplane's number is this. Like, it's not for the lack of knowing. This isn't about faith and hope. This is about proximity. This is about visibility and insight into a process. Complete and utter transparency. So if we can't do this with technology, which I think we can, if we can't do this through process, which I think we can, how can we expect candidates to have a better experience with this? You know, we want them to have a better experience. We've got to change not just some behaviors and be different people, if you will. We actually have to kind of rethink the way that we go about this type of business, because they have an ever-increasing need to know exactly where they are in the process. So we change or we die. So there's, you know, we've got a dinosaur story here. We change or we die. FedEx has created a lovely model outside of our industry that we can completely steal and bring it into our industry. And it starts with process. So I've said this, you know, for the last year or so, that process eats software for breakfast. And I really, in my heart of hearts, I really believe that you can put inferior tech on a superior process, but you can't do the opposite. Now, if you put a superior tech on a superior process, that's competitive advantage. Okay, but you got to get the process right. You got to get that process right. What works best for our candidates, and not think about what works best for us, which is the way that we've done recruiting for 100 years, is we think about what's best for us. You know, that's what we've thought about, and I think those days are. I think those days are behind us already. It's just whether or not we will adapt and become agile enough to understand that the game has changed. And this isn't just about the talent market. I mean, one could say that supply and demand, and right now you have a bunch of demand, you don't have the supply, and so candidates have all the power. And once we have a recession or another 9/11, God forbid, that it will all swoop back to recruiters, and the recruiters will have all the power. And first of all, I don't believe that. I think the air is out of the bottle. Candidates now have a different experience, and they're going to want to have that transparency even when there is more talent than the jobs. So I think that expectation is different. I think you have a wonderful model in FedEx that you can just rip right from them and apply to yourself. So the first thing I would do here with FedEx is I would say, what can we do to be more transparent? What's our process? How do we re-engineer our recruiting process to be, start with the idea of being 100% transparent, knowing that you might not be able to live up to that lofty goal, but try your best to get to 100% transparency, and then model your technology on that process.
Hey, William, just a really interesting insight from Diane, who's on the line. She says she worked for FedEx for 17 years. And their customers expect 99.9% on-time delivery and information access, because that's the, you know, they set those goals, right? But the key to her is that all employees are actually empowered to give that kind of service all the time, and that empowerment is really the key. And I think that's really right on.
Yeah, that gets back to values, right? That gets back to your values, your ethics, your morality. That gets back to a lot of things. But that empowerment, you know, we could say it's all top down, and that you behave the way that your managers and leaders and the board and all that. But I don't really, in my heart of hearts, I don't really believe that. I believe that we're all humans and we can behave the way that we want to. And if we want to give people feedback because we know that it's better for them to know, then we just do that. And I think that we're coming from an era where it was just okay not to give feedback. Like, whether or not we like it or not, like, I don't even want to judge that. But we're that era is gone. You just can't, in a transparent world that we live in right now, you just can't not give feedback. You can't give a candidate of, hey, yeah, we're going to look at your resume. Godspeed. and that's it. That creates a bad candidate experience, but it also creates a bad employer experience and ultimately a bad customer experience. And this hits the bottom line. Eventually it hits the bottom line. And this is where people that have a bad experience with us, what do? They tweet. They go on LinkedIn, they go on Facebook, they go on Instagram, they go on Glassdoor. They go and they tell other people about their experience, which is exactly what we do. So, we shouldn't be shocked about this. But I want you to rip off the wonderful things that FedEx has done to create that crystal clear mentality of we care enough. We don't hope and trust. We appreciate you giving us that, but we want to be able to make sure that you know where you're at so that it mitigates anxiety and so that you love us even more for providing that, which is the goal of all employers. So we'd be missing if we didn't talk about, okay, got it, how do we sell this? Well, totally appreciate you, but how do we sell it internally? And I'll give you some tips and tricks, and I want to start with, you either have if you have a terrible company that you work for, just a horrendous company that you work for, my best advice is to get another job. So there's that. If you have a good company, at one point, if you look at the relationships your company has with human beings, and human beings can be candidates, they can be prospects, they can be employees, they can be customers, and they can be vendors or partners, if you will. That's about it. That's about the number of relationships that a company can have with a human being. So somewhere in a good company is great relationships, and it might be in your employees, okay? Company treats its employees magically. They love the company. The company would do anything to make sure that they love them, etc. So the first thing we need to do is, if our candidate experience isn't where we want it to be, we need to highlight that we as a company have good relationships. We have good relationships with our employees. We just we haven't applied the same rigor. Okay, we haven't applied the same logic or the outcomes of the process. We haven't applied that to candidates. So the sell, if you will, is to highlight where you do it well. And maybe it's just customers. You treat customers really, 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 really well. You put them up on a pedestal. You take care of them. It's just one of those magical relationships. Think of like REI and the relationship it has with its customers, right? They just love their customers. They bend over backwards for their customers. So it's already inherently in the system. It's there. It's there, and all we have to do is apply that logic and emotion to candidates. What do we want them to experience? And go back to the grocery store. What do we want them to experience when they're in the parking lot? What do we want them to feel? What do we want them to think? When they go through that grocery experience, what do we want them? We've done that somewhere else in the company. Unless you work for a terrible company, then I can't help you. But prospects, customers, employees, or partners, you've done it somewhere else, I promise. Now it's a matter of ripping off those best practices that are already within your cultural norms and values and rip those off and apply them in the same way that you would towards your candidates. Okay. So before you would put any type of answers to this, I want you to consider something else. I did a focus group study, if you will, with TCU. This is about 6 months ago now, and I had hundreds of TCU graduates in rooms over a course of about 6 different days, different majors, all that whole bit. And what I was trying to learn was, what's the job search? The last time I searched for a job, it was 1997. So admittedly, it's been a while since I've searched for a job. Fair. So how do they search for jobs? Okay, here's what I learned. If someone refers you to a gig, let's say you're and I don't want to put an age to it, so I won't, but let's just say a friend refers you to a gig. I think you'd be great at, working at Ford. They've got a market research department that would love you. I think you'd just do really well. Detroit's, whatever, but they would love you, and I think you should take a look at it. Before they do anything else after that referral is they Google the company. and they go through several layers of Google, more than me. I have the patience of a gnat, so I'm out on the first O. But they Google the company. They want to know more about the company. Second thing they do is they Glassdoor the company. And what they're looking for is not all positive reviews. So it's kind of, again, counterintuitive. You would think that they're just looking for, oh, this is the best company ever, blah, blah, blah. You'd be a fool not to work at this company. First of all, they don't trust that. This is a group of people now job searching where it's got to be a blend of 90-10, 80-20, where there's got to be a couple people going, you know, it's a good company, wasn't for me. I couldn't see my career path there. You know, you need both those stories because that's the story of every company, turns out. And they're looking at the CEO's ratings. They want to see a CEO rated above 3.5. Fours are really what people believe. Fives, no one believes that. And CEOs hate to hear that, by the way. So then the third thing that they do is they go into LinkedIn, and they have newly created profiles and all that other stuff, but they reach out to former employees. So in that case, they would reach out to Forward, their market research department, and they would find former employees, and they'll send them emails and messages. And it's real simple. Would you work there again? Would you refer it to someone? Is this company, you know, this is Net Promoter Score 101. Is this company referenceable? And if it's not, the thing is, in these 3 steps, this is before they apply to the job. Like, we get them after they've done this. So they've already stalked us. And by the way, stalking, you know, there's a connotation around stalking, right? Most people think of stalking in a bad way, but really stalking to people under 30 is actually just research. They just use the word stalking. Yeah, I stalked her. Yeah, I stalked him. Yeah, I stalked the company. And we think of it like, oh, stalking, like you're peering in windows. No, no, no. They're going to do all of this stuff and vet you before they even apply. Okay? So we need to think about that and that experience that they have before they even apply. All right, I got 2 things I want to say in parting words, and I want to wrap it up before Q&A with some ROI talk. First thing is I believe even at the onset of the Candidate Experience Awards, I think we collectively thought of the candidate experience as a nice to have. You could separate yourself from competitors if you had a you know, better candidate experience than not. And I think we've got to move our mentality away from nice to have. That now, because the market has changed, because candidates' expectations have changed so radically, that it's not a nice to have anymore. It is basically, if you're not doing it, you look archaic. And this, you know, we've done this in technology before. You know, you can remember back in an era where you looked at a company, and if they didn't have a website, you didn't think of them, you know, in the same way. Or if they had an AOL email address, you thought of them in a certain way. Like, this isn't new to us. You talk to people and they've never been on Twitter, you're like, huh, that's interesting. What cave did you come out of? So we've done this before. We judge people silently before, and I think we're being judged on whether or not that experience has been thought out. Okay, it's not just left for chance. It's not happenstance. It's not haphazard. It's orchestrated. It's been well designed and well thought of. And I think that is, we've got to move. It's us. Shocking. It's us that have to change. We've got to move our mentality over to, yeah, this is not a thing that it's optional. We have to do it. And I think if you peer into that even more, you look at an ugly thing like top talent, and I think we still kind of operate a belief system, at least an HR belief system, that 80% of the value comes from 20% of the workforce. I think that's why you have succession planning. I think that's why you treat high performers and high potentials a certain way. Whether or not it's true or not, you know, time will tell. But that top talent, however you want to define it, that top talent has even higher expectations. So if you're dealing with C and D and B talent, there's a range of expectations there. When you're dealing with A talent, their expectations for a fantastic candidate experience, I mean, it's jarring how different their experience, what do they expect? And again, they're silently judging you. You didn't have a car at the airport to pick me up? You didn't think enough to have an Uber to come pick me up at the airport for the interview? Like, okay, well, you don't get it, obviously. Like, why would I ever interact with you if you don't get it? That's basic. You know, these things that we've just not really reflected on deeply with top talent, the expectations are even further and even deeper than we want. I think the last point there is if you want to dazzle, and again, back to the grocery store metaphor, if you will allow me, there are all those micro experiences you could dazzle. There's a choice that grocery store had in all of those micro experiences to dazzle. And it's choice that we either dazzle or we don't. We either think about dazzling or we don't. And if we're thinking about dazzling, we're on the right path. Because even if we treat people better than they had the expectation, that's a customer for life. That's a candidate for life. That's a customer for life. That's someone that thinks highly of us forever. Those are the reviews in Glassdoor, by the way. Hey, I didn't get the job, but they were so fantastic. It's my life goal to go to work for these people. You know, they were transparent, they were kind, they were interesting. You know, I got to go get my master's degree, but I want to go, and the first job I'll apply to, once I get that done, is here. Those reviews are the reviews we're shooting for. Okay, so last thing before I talk badly about ROI. So I'm one of these guys, and I've afforded myself the position of being one of these guys, but I am one of these guys that I don't believe in the math until it's believable. Okay? So here's the thing about ROI. Most people, I think, are probably looking for a number. If I spend $100,000, what do I get? Right? That's cost benefit analysis, business case, you know, ROI kind of 101 type shit. I'm looking to spend, I'm looking to get. Okay. Well, there is no number, so I'm gonna kill your Easter bunny for a moment. There is no magic number. There is no magic bullet. There is no elixir that solves all of these problems. The thing with math, especially right now where we are in the stage, is I think the math will come. Okay, I honestly believe in 10 years from now that we will have a very easy way to calculate both the candidate experience and employer brand. I do believe in that. I just don't believe we're there yet. And I think it's a lot of fuzzy multivariable math. Okay, so even something as simple as the candidate experience, you say, okay, well, the candidate had a better experience. We went from a 7 to a 9. What does that mean? Is that because people talked to them? Or is that because the technology worked on their mobile phone? Is that because you got a brand new CEO? Or is that because it was just announced that you got a new round of funding? So there's a lot of things that could get baked into what will inevitably be a wonderful number. And there will be an ROI. So I will tell you a future story of you will go into the office and have a number that you're shooting for. I believe that in my heart. I don't believe you can do that now. And I'm about trying to actually be very pragmatic. How do you make it work for your team right now? How do you sell it? How do you walk into the CFO's office or just CHRO's office and say, here's what we have to do? I think that argument should be emotional. I think right now the argument, because math isn't perfect, and people they'll tear your math apart, I think you should not use math. My advice right now at this juncture is to walk in their office and say, we're going to lose our edge to recruit talent. Here's the experiences that we have with our customers and how great we are. Here's the experience we have with our employees and how great we are. We don't have that level of greatness with our candidates. And oh, by the way, all of those people have Twitter accounts. So it's a must-have. It isn't a nice-to-have, it's a must-have. And when they ask you the question about math, okay, well, you know, that sounds reasonable. You know, what are we going to do ROI-wise? I would tell you that there are things right now that you can get a great number around ROI, and then there's things that you just can't. We're in that little bitty era where you just can't get great math. It's coming, and especially because of people like with the Candidate Experience Awards, the more research they do, the more we'll get to singling out some of those multivariables to get to the heart of, okay, these are the 3 measurements. Here's your scoring system. Here's what it looks like. And for every dollar you pull over here, here's the lever of what you get over here. I do believe in that. I believe we're a couple of years away. So I don't take it lightly that I'm kind of crapping all over ROI, but I just think there's a better way to argue the case. And sometimes you use math, and sometimes you use logic and rational thought, and sometimes you use emotion. I would advise you to use emotion.
Actually, William, on that, I did just post in the chat area an article that includes some stats that I think you can use to convince the C-suite that this is really important. So maybe something people can check out after the webinar. With that, we have quite a few questions actually. Before we go to questions, just 2 things I wanted to say on behalf of Lever. First of all, going back to what William said near the outset about challenging you to apply for a position at your own company, I'm here to tell you that applying for a job doesn't have to be painful. It shouldn't be painful. And one of the things that I'm most gratified by in working at Lever is that every week we get feedback like what you see on screen here from candidates saying that they actually breathe a sigh of relief when they see that Lever is powering the career site of a company, because it tends to automatically lead to a better experience for them as candidates. So it's something that we're very proud of and that we will continue to focus on. So that's one thing. And then on the next slide, I just have 3 quick tips for that. I know we have some customers listening in today. 3 ways that you can improve your candidate experience through Lever. So the first thing is, as you know in recruiting, timing is everything. And so we actually have a feature called Snooze, where on any individual candidate profile, if you hear back from them in the course of correspondence that they have a vesting cliff coming up, or they're waiting for a bonus, or they're just back from mat leave and they don't have, they just can't process the opportunity, you can snooze them, you can add notes, and basically that tucks them out of your site, and when the time is right, when that snooze expires, they pop back into your line of vision and you can pick up the conversation where you left off, and it will be much better timing. So that's the first thing. Secondly, we know that interviewing is really, really so key to establishing a great candidate experience, and that's a whole other topic for another day. But within Lever, you can actually use our interview kit capabilities to set up really clear instructions for your interviewers so that they're at least asking the right questions, they're asking complementary questions, and they're learning what you need them to learn in order to form a well-rounded opinion of that candidate. And then the last thing is, and this is really kind of tied to that first point around timing being important, timeliness of communication and transparency across your team as you're working with candidates is absolutely critical in establishing good rapport with them. And so to aid with all of that, we have a really nifty email sync with 1 click that allows you to make sure that whether a candidate is responding to you or corresponding with you while you're in Lever or in your inbox, it all appears in one place, giving the whole team visibility into the conversation. So just 3 quick tips there on how Lever supports a better candidate experience. With that, let's go to the final slide and to questions. If you're interested in Lever, you can certainly sign up for a demo, and we'd love to have that conversation with you. But with that, next slide, and questions that are coming in right now. So first of all, Dale, who's joining us from New Zealand rather, asks if you could share any examples of companies that have done a really good job on the candidate experience side in auditing their process and running a better one, just as some.
Oh, you're going to have great examples, and I think that's Dale with Weirdly. Dale, what I would say is go and look at the people that have won Candidate Experience Awards in the last 5 years. I know PepsiCo, I know AT&T and American Airlines. There's some great examples, and if you want, I can put you in touch with Jerry Crispin, and he'll walk you through who does a great job. Like, he knows step by step how to create that orchestration that you want. And so there's some great, first of all, I'd look at people that won the awards because there's rigor. And the rigor is you have to survey the candidates, and the survey, they have to independently get those responses. So I mean, I think it's actually really good research, and I think the people that have won those awards, they put themselves out there, and they put themselves out there to be critiqued and to be reviewed, both by their candidates as well as the auditing folks at the Candies. And so I would start there. Like, instead of just hypothesizing on other big brands that do a good job of it, go and look at the folks that have won awards. And if it isn't easily found for you, just email me, and I'll get you a list of the companies. That's easy.
Great. Next question from Al. which I think is kind of an interesting challenge to some of these ideas here, William. I'm all for creating an unbelievable candidate experience, but aren't you describing a one-way experience? Isn't this magnifying the sense of entitlement seen among the millennial generation? Ouch.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But do you want to recruit them? At the end of the day, in your talent portfolio management view of the world, do you want to recruit them? Because their expectations have changed. It's just like when cars went from no air conditioning to air conditioning. Well, we could have made fun of that generation. In fact, I guarantee the greatest generation of boomers when that change was made, right? But now what is the expectation? I won't even get in a car that doesn't have air conditioning, especially in Texas. I mean, that's crazy. That's how, that's how people die. So I think we're looking at it at this point. I would love to bake in points where they can give you feedback. How are we doing? Are we meeting your expectations? So that you kind of in real time understand, where they're, that sentiment of where they're at in the process. So you can divorce the two of, are they going to get the job and are they having a good experience? And for a long time, we haven't divorced those two. We put the two together, and hoped. And I think you can divide the two and say, hey, you're going to either get the job or not. And that's going to be on chemistry and fit and skills and experience and a bunch of other stuff. But that is separate from the experience that we want you to have. So it's got to be in your heart. It's got to be in your values. You got to really want to recruit that talent. And yeah, it might make you throw up in your mouth a little bit, but I would assume that that's what all generations say about the generation that came after them.
All right, and last question, and please, you'll see a poll on the screen. If you could please rate today's webinar, that'd be super helpful for us for future planning. The last question is from Maya. You talked about honesty in the process, but people often they think they want honesty, but they don't really. Honesty is hard. How honest is too honest?
Well, it's okay. So you take feedback, and you can make feedback into it's a 2x2 of solicited, unsolicited, positive, and negative. And the worst thing that you could do in feedback is to give them unsolicited negative feedback. Okay, that's the worst. That's the bottom box. Okay, unsolicited negative feedback. The best you can do is solicited positive feedback. And so the question to ask yourself is that candidate is, first of all, I don't want to assume that you want feedback. Okay, this is where we are in the process. This is why you're not going to make it to the next stage of this particular process, but we're going to look at other things. Would you like some feedback? If you do, great. If you don't, I just want to be here for you. And let the candidate decide. Let them, a lot of this is meeting them where they are. And if they say, yes, I want feedback, that's solicited. then you can give them the feedback. I mean, you're not trying to kill people. You're trying to give them advice on how to be better. If people don't care to consume that, then they'll tune you out. They'll rationalize it as bad advice, or they'll just think you're an asshole or whatever. But it's not for the not asking them. And for years, we've gotten away with not even asking them, like doing what we think is best and not doing that. But I think you just ask them. These are adults. No one's dealing with people under, 16. Just ask them, do you want feedback? Yes? Great. Okay, now here's what feedback plays out. There's going to be some positive things here. There's going to be some negative things here. You could call that positive reinforcement or constructive criticism. But at the end of the day, I'm going to give you both. Are you cool? Are you good? And if they green light you, you're good. If they don't, then don't give them the feedback.
Fair enough. All right, speaking of feedback, I'm going to close the poll in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, and that's it. So with that, thank you so much, William, for joining us today and for sharing your very thought-provoking grocery analogy and taking us to all kinds of places as we explored candidate experience. Thank everyone for tuning in. We will be sending out slides and also a link to the recording. And if you feel so inclined, please do join us next week. We're hosting a webinar with Jeremy Johnson, who's the CEO of Andela. They're doing some incredible stuff around diversity, and so he's going to join us to give us some insights into how to build a diverse team and also why you should be doing it. So hope you can make that one too. Thanks for tuning in all the way from New Zealand in some cases, and have a wonderful day.